DIY with Papa Izzo, we talked about drawing a diagram. These diagrams are extremely important for measurements and for calculating angles. The key to drawing a diagram is those parallel lines. If we notice, the left line has the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 4. That slope is extremely important. It matches the slope of the parallel right line. That right line also has the same slope. Both have the same rise over run. The up 1/2 slope is seen in both of those lines. For the left line, it has a y-intercept of 4, meaning it intersects the y-axis at 4 units. Now, for our second line, our right line, it's not actually positive 4. If we follow that line all the way down, it's probably around -3. So be very careful. The y-intercept, not as important as the slope. The slope is what determines if things are parallel. That is the key. Parallel lines have to have the same slope. In order to draw a diagram from a different perspective, we aren't going to be using parallel lines, but rather perpendicular lines. So let's take a look at how that works. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes, which sounds pretty complicated. Opposite means we have to flip the sign. So if it's a positive 1/2, it becomes a negative 1/2. That was opposite. Reciprocal means we flip the fraction. So a negative 1/2 becomes a -2/1. So opposite reciprocal means flip the sign, flip the fraction. Now to draw our perpendicular line, we use the same equation, just sub in a different slope. So if I want a line perpendicular to my left side line, we are going to have the y-intercept of positive 4, but we are going to have a slope of -2/1. This means going down 2/1. That is how we draw a perpendicular line. Now that we have a perpendicular line, I can scooch that beautiful parallel line down to where it's more appropriate. Now we have 3 sides of a rectangle. We can fill in the 4th side, and there we go. We have a nice rectangle with 4 90-degree angles. Notice a rectangle is a type of parallelogram, so the sides need to be parallel. The top and bottom both have the same slope, up 1/2, and the 2 sides have down 2/1 as their slope. Once we have a rectangle, we can form a second rectangle on top of it and draw our lines to make a rectangular prism. Notice, this is the same rectangular prism that we've seen before, but now it's at a different angle. This is helpful if we want to do something like just talk about the floor of our patio or the roof. Speaking of the roof, it's at an angle, so we need to draw in that angle, which means another parallel line up top, and then we connect it to our rectangular prism to make our trapezoidal prism. This gives us that angle, but now that triangle base is not facing us like it was in our last diagram. Now it's slanted a little bit so we can see the roof more clearly, or we can see the floor more clearly. This is extremely helpful depending on what we want the diagram to do and how we're using the diagram. Since this episode is all about the floor, we're going to be focusing on that part of the diagram. Today's part of the project is just to do the edge of the floor. That edge will then help lock the screens into place. Notice, Papa Izzo is using very fancy lumber for the edge of the floor. This is old molding that he is going to reclaim and repurpose. Because it has that fancy edge to it, he is going to need to cut it in a different way. He bisects that 90-degree angle to find that each end needs to be cut at a 45-degree angle. When he cuts each end at a 45-degree angle, that will allow the ends to fit together in a seamless edge. Now it is time to adhere the edge to the floor so that it doesn't move. To do this, he will use screws, just like normal. Notice these screws are being driven in perpendicularly to the floor, not at that 10-degree angle. In this case, we don't need to use that device. At this point, it might look like I'm doing nothing, but actually, I'm being used as a counterweight to stabilize the floor to allow Papa Izzo to screw in the edge and have it not flip up on him. After a busy day of monitoring our progress, it's time for Orzo's snack time.
So,